There comes a quiet, almost invisible moment in life when you begin to understand that the things draining your remaining years are not the obvious tragedies you prepared for. They're not the big disasters, not the sudden losses, not the dramatic turning points. They're smaller than that, quieter. They slip into your days unnoticed, disguised as normal, as routine, as responsibility. And by the time most people recognize them, they've already surrendered years, sometimes a decade or more, to burdens they never needed to carry. I'm 83 years old, my name is Mary, and if I could go back to 65, back to that first morning of retirement, back to when my husband Richard was still alive, back to when I believed the hardest chapters of life were behind me, I would make very different choices. Not slowly, not gently. I would eliminate 7 things immediately without hesitation. Because between 65 and 83, I carried weight that made me smaller than I was meant to be. It made me quieter. It made me cautious when I should have been alive. It drained energy I'll never get back and took time that cannot be reclaimed. And what unsettles me most is this. I see people now in their late 50s, their 60s, even their 70s, carrying those exact same weights. They assume it's normal. They assume there's time. They assume they'll deal with it later. But later is where the loss happens. And I don't want that for you. Because maybe you're at the beginning of this stage. Maybe you're standing right at the edge of it. And maybe, just maybe, you can drop these things before they take more from you than they should. Richard died when I was 75, a heart attack, sudden. One moment he was standing in the kitchen making coffee, and the next he was gone. No warning, no goodbye. But here's what people don't tell you about loss like that. The real grief doesn't just come from the moment someone leaves. It comes from the years before, the years you thought you had time to fully live. Those 10 years between 65 and 75 were supposed to be our reward. We had worked for decades. We had raised children, paid bills, made sacrifices. That time was supposed to belong to us, and we wasted more of it than I want to admit. Not in obvious ways, not in ways anyone would point out, but slowly, quietly, through patterns that drained life from us without us realizing it. The first thing I would eliminate, without question, is maintaining relationships that stopped being real a long time ago. At 65, I had a wide social circle. Dozens of women from church, former colleagues, neighbors from different stages of life, acquaintances who had simply accumulated over time. On the surface, it looked rich and full, but most of it wasn't real. It was maintenance. I spent hours writing cards, attending events, making small talk, keeping connections alive out of obligation. It felt like something I had to do to remain social, to be seen as kind, involved, connected. But those interactions drained me. I remember sitting at a lunch when I was around 68, surrounded by women I had known for decades. Conversations floated around the table. Vacations, grandchildren, renovations, finances. Everyone was polite. Everyone was engaged. Everyone was performing. And I realized sitting there that I couldn't bring my real thoughts into that space. The things that mattered to me, the questions I was asking myself, the quiet moments I was learning to appreciate, didn't belong there. So I performed too, and when I got home, I felt exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with my body. That pattern continued for years. Until one December at 71, I sat down to write holiday cards and paused. I looked at the long list of names and asked myself a question I had never truly asked before. Who do I actually care about hearing from? The answer was shocking. Out of more than 80 names, only a handful truly mattered. So I stopped. I let go of dozens of shallow connections I had been maintaining out of habit and fear. And what I discovered afterward was unexpected. I didn't feel lonely. I felt lighter. The second thing I would eliminate is waiting to spend money on experiences that actually matter. Richard wanted to travel, not just casually. He had dreams. Italy, Ireland, national parks, places tied to history, to meaning, to curiosity. And every time he brought it up, I said the same thing. Let's wait. I thought I was being responsible, careful, practical, but what I was really doing was postponing life. We told ourselves we would go next year, then the year after that, and then time quietly changed the conditions. His energy declined. His health became uncertain. Travel became complicated, and then it became impossible. After he died, I sat with the financial security we had worked so hard to build and realized something that still unsettles me. We had protected our money at the cost of our time, and time is the one thing you cannot earn back. The third thing I would eliminate is eating in a way that ignores what your body actually needs. For years, I ate the way I always had. Comfort food, large portions, habits built over decades. But my body had changed, and I ignored it. The result wasn't immediate, but it was steady. Less energy, more discomfort, more medications. I didn't realize how much control I had over my own well-being until much later. And by then, I had spent years feeling worse than I needed to. The fourth thing is speaking when I should have been listening. This one cost me something deeply personal. I believed I was helping my children by giving advice. I thought my experience gave me the right to guide them. But what I didn't understand was that they didn't need direction. They needed to be heard. Over time, they shared less with me. Conversations became surface level. I thought it was distance. It wasn't. It was my inability to listen. Changing that was difficult. It required undoing decades of habit. But when I did, even imperfectly, something shifted. They opened up again, and I realized how much I had missed. The fifth thing I would eliminate is inactivity disguised as rest. Retirement felt like permission to slow down, and slowing down quietly turned into stopping. Sitting became the default, and over time my body weakened in ways that felt sudden, but weren't. Strength doesn't disappear overnight. It fades gradually, while you're not paying attention, and rebuilding it is much harder than maintaining it. The sixth thing is obsessing over numbers instead of paying attention to how you actually feel. At one point, I measured everything: blood pressure, health metrics. Small fluctuations felt like threats. I believed those numbers defined my health, but they don't tell the whole story. How you move, how you feel, how you live, those matter just as much, if not more. And finally, the seventh thing, the most important one, is comparison. It's subtle, but it's relentless. You look at other people's lives, their achievements, their plans, their families, and you measure yourself against them. And without realizing it, you diminish your own experience. I did that for years, until one quiet morning, sitting alone with a cup of coffee, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to fully feel before: contentment. Not because anything impressive was happening, but because nothing needed to be. That moment changed something in me. I stopped measuring. I started noticing, and life, as simple as it was, became enough. I can't undo the years I spent carrying these weights, but I can tell you this, they're not necessary. They're not inevitable. And the sooner you recognize them, the more time you reclaim. So if you're at 60 or 65 or even earlier, pay attention. Look closely at what you're holding on to and ask yourself honestly, is this adding to my life or quietly taking from it? Because the difference between those two paths isn't dramatic. It's made of small decisions, repeated daily, and over time, those decisions become your life. I'm still learning, still letting go, still discovering what matters and what doesn't. And I'm grateful for the time I have now, for the clarity that came, even if it came late. If something in this resonates with you, don't wait. You don't need permission to live differently. You only need the willingness to stop carrying what was never yours to begin with. Take care of yourself, whatever that means to you.